Welcome to Have More Babies, the show where we really get into the nitty-gritty of parenting. Today, we're tackling, well, a phase that everyone knows can be a real roller coaster,
Mhm.
raising teenagers. Our goal here really is to give you a bit of a shortcut through this often complex journey. We want to share some practical insights and hopefully empower you as a parent. So, we're going to explore how we can best guide our teens and, crucially, who our key partners are in this incredible, sometimes hair-pulling, but ultimately really rewarding journey. Our insights today, they come straight from Omega Pediatrics and their fantastic article, Navigating the Teen Years, How Your Pediatrician Can Help. Okay, let's unpack this. When we talk about adolescence, the usual picture is that sort of awkward phase, right? Where a
Hmm.
child is no longer a kid, but not yet an adult. But what Omega Pediatrics points out, and it's often overlooked, is that the changes aren't just for the teen. They affect the whole family. Everyone has to kind of deal with their changing emotions because of the social challenges they need to face. So to make it a bit less overwhelming, the article breaks adolescence down into these distinct stages. What's that first stage we should be looking at?
Yeah, that's a really crucial place to start. Early adolescence, which is roughly ages 8 to 13, it's marked by what Omega Pediatrics calls lightning speed physical changes. Really fast. You'll see some pretty noticeable body changes. Things like hair growth, underarms, private areas, breast development in girls, sometimes starting surprisingly early, like 8 or 9 even, and larger testicles in boys. But what's really fascinating here and often missed is the emotional side of all this physical stuff. Kids can become deeply conscious or even anxious, especially maybe girls when periods start. And it's not just physical. This is also a stage where, questions about gender identity might start to come up. And cognitively, they're thinking it's still quite rigid. Omega Pediatrics talks about a black or white perspective. They literally struggle with shades of gray. Things are either perfect or just completely wrong. It makes understanding complex social stuff pretty tricky. This self-consciousness also fuels this really strong need for increased privacy, which, well, often looks like pushing boundaries and having really strong reactions when parents set limits. It's not always defiance, though. It's often a genuine developmental need for space.
That black or white perspective, wow, that really reframes things, doesn't it? What might seem like pure stubbornness is actually part of their development. Okay, so after these foundational physical and early emotional shifts start to settle, teens often kick into another gear, right?
Hmm.
Especially socially and emotionally as we move into middle adolescence. That's typically ages 14 to 17. What are we seeing then?
Exactly. In middle adolescence, the physical changes are still happening. Voice cracking, acne for boys, periods becoming more regular for girls. But the really big shift is social. There's this growing interest in romance, in sexual relationships. Omega Pediatrics mentions that this can involve exploration, like masturbation, which is, a totally normal part of figuring out their sexuality. And this is also when that push for independence really, really ramps up, which often means, well, more arguments with parents. Appearance becomes super important. And peer pressure, it can be incredibly powerful. Cognitively, they are developing abstract thinking. They're starting to think more about consequences, but, and this is key, they're still prone to acting on impulse. So, yeah, it's definitely a challenging phase, but the advice from Omega Pediatrics is clear. Those consistent boundaries, still absolutely essential. It's a real balancing act.
That balance between impulse and thinking ahead sounds like a tightrope walk for parents sometimes. Okay, so we've gone through early and middle. Where does that leave us when they're really, standing on the edge of adulthood? What's late adolescence about? Omega Pediatrics calls it the adulting adolescence, which I like.
Right, the adulting adolescence. This is where you really see them reaching their full height and growing into a young, mature individual.
Hmm.
And probably one of the most significant changes Omega Pediatrics points out here is much better decision-making. Teens genuinely start to weigh the pros and cons. They give examples like thinking through practicing safe sex or using drugs. It shows a much more critical, more nuanced way of thinking developing. Beyond just decisions, they're really establishing their own identities and values. Their focus shifts, towards future plans and what they want to achieve. And this is where that parent-teen relationship goes through its biggest change. You shift from being maybe the strict rule makers to becoming more like advisors and confidants. It's less about imposing rules, much more about guiding, supporting, listening as they take on more independence.
Okay, so we've mapped out the stages, the sort of what of the roller coaster, but understanding that naturally leads to, well, how? How do we, as parents, actually support them through these years? What are the most effective strategies, according to Omega Pediatrics?
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak.
Yeah.
Omega Pediatrics really emphasizes starting with open and comfortable discussions, especially about puberty and sexuality. The aim isn't just to lecture, but to create a space where your kid feels totally safe asking anything without feeling awkward or embarrassed. And this includes starting early conversations on those sensitive topics such as healthy relationships, sex, consent, and substance use. These aren't just one-off talks, right? They're ongoing dialogues that build trust over time. Keeping communication positive and uplifting is also really key. Celebrating their wins, acknowledging their strengths. And while you're giving them more room to grow, it's still vital to set clear but reasonable expectations. Things like curfews, school stuff, media use, general behavior. It gives them a secure frame as they explore being more independent. And that independence, it needs to be expanded gradually. Omega Pediatrics suggests giving them chances to take on more responsibility, letting them learn from, well, natural consequences sometimes.
Openly talking about risky behaviors and their consequences. And this is crucial. Setting a positive example yourself. Those are really powerful tools. What's fascinating here, I think, is the emphasis on really honoring their independence, their individuality, fostering a strong but respectful relationship where you're kind of partners in this stage. It's about empowerment, not control.
That balance between boundaries and independence, yeah, sounds like a constant adjustment for parents. And that brings us to another really critical partner here, your pediatrician. Because that relationship, it really changes quite a bit during the teen years, doesn't it? Omega Pediatrics highlights something key, that one-on-one time with a pediatrician during checkups, where parents are asked to step out for a bit. I know from talking to other parents that most parents feel anxious about this, and hey, if you feel that way, you are definitely not alone. So why is this one-on-one time so important? What's the real purpose behind it?
That anxiety is totally normal. And Omega Pediatrics really gets that. The main reason for this one-on-one time isn't about shutting parents out at all. It's actually to prepare your team for the transition to adult health care with confidence and independence. A lot of parents understandably think, wow, is it time for this already? But the real reason, like the article says, is so the doctor can hear what your child has to say. When a parent's right there, kids often just, look to them for the answers. By creating this private space, the pediatrician helps the teen become more self-reliant, more comfortable talking directly about their own health.
Ah, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
And another common question is, isn't my child too young? But the great thing is, these visits are tailored to your child's age and developmental stage. So, for example, a 12-year-old might not be asked about sexual activity if it's just not relevant yet, developmentally speaking. But an older teen, they might be. Omega Pediatrics' goal is really to connect with your child, to be responsible for managing their health, customizing it all.
Right, building that foundation for managing their health for life. But okay, it does bring up the question of confidentiality, especially with sensitive stuff like mental health or, sexual activity. How does Omega Pediatrics handle that balance between privacy and parents' need or right to know?
It is a delicate balance, but it's absolutely critical. Omega Pediatrics is really clear on this. Your child's private information is safe with your child's doctor. This privacy is taken very seriously. The only exceptions, and they're very specific and rare, are if your child becomes a danger to themselves or to others. They state very clearly that they uphold statutory laws on minors' rights to confidentiality. Now, these laws do vary depending on your state or city, but the core principle is always about prioritizing your child's best interests. So what that means in practice is, even if a family maybe doesn't talk openly about everything, the teen can still get the medical care they need. This covers confidential topics like abortion, birth control, and mental health. The whole point is for teens to feel comfortable talking openly, knowing their privacy is protected. They also mention the mature minor doctrine, which is basically a legal guideline for when pediatricians can provide treatment based on the teen's own consent, if they're deemed mature enough to make that decision. But, and this is important for parents, while emphasizing confidentiality for the teen, Omega Pediatrics makes sure the doctor always involves the parents in decision-making regarding the health care of their children. The big picture goal is always to make the child comfortable in taking on the responsibility of managing their health. It really is collaborative, not about excluding parents.
That's such a key point, fostering responsibility, not just for healthcare, but sort of for adult life in general. It means letting go a little bit, which, gosh, as parents, that can feel incredible. Yeah, that sounds like this ongoing process of calibrating things. Does Omega Pediatrics offer maybe a framework or some steps for parents trying to foster this independence?
They absolutely do, and it's actually quite straightforward and helpful. First, foster independence. This is really about trusting the good job you've already done raising them. It means consciously stepping back a bit, letting them take control of more areas of their lives. Second, stay connected. Even as you grant more freedom, keep providing that guidance and feedback. This means maintaining effective communication, and importantly, trying to approach conflicts with respect, not just trying to win every argument. And third, practice what you preach. Simple as that. You are their main role model. Your actions, well, they speak way louder than any lecture. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it really means trusting the values and guidance you've instilled, even if their choices right now aren't exactly what you choose for them. The overarching message from Omega Pediatrics is so clear. Your child's pediatrician isn't just for shots and checkups. They are truly a proactive partner in this whole evolving journey of parenting a teenager.
Wow, what an incredibly insightful look at navigating these teen years. We've really unpacked the dynamic stages of development, haven't we? From early adolescence right through to that adulting adolescence phase Omega Pediatrics talks about. We've highlighted the amazing power of open communication from parents, setting those clear but reasonable expectations, and that really profound shift towards fostering independence with strategic support. And so importantly, we've brought the pediatrician's role into sharp focus, how vital and changing it is. They're your partner, providing not just medical care, but also that safe, confidential space for your team to grow into managing their own health. Remember, you are absolutely not alone in this journey. Now, for more in-depth resources, maybe specific forms, or if you want to connect directly with experts who really get the nuances of teen health and development, we strongly recommend visiting omegapediatrics.com. That's omegapediatrics.com. They are genuinely there to help you and your child tackle these physical and emotional health issues, providing exactly that partnership we've been discussing today.
And maybe this raises an important question for you to think about. As your teen continues to grow and change, how can you proactively use some of the insights we've shared today to really strengthen your connection with them? Especially knowing that your pediatrician is right there, ready to be a key part of that ongoing conversation.
That's a wonderful thought to leave everyone with. Thank you so much for joining us on this exploration on Have More Babies. We'll see you next time.